G'day so-and-sos and welcome to my sewing room. Welcome back if you've been here before. My name's Kathy and I'm really happy to have you here today because I have another fun bag for us to make. Now this bag is great for beginners but also good for those more experienced people, and I'll explain why. The outside is just one piece of fabric. The inside is just one piece of fabric. So there's not a whole lot of pattern pieces to cut out and then try and put together. Then I have the zipper pockets, one on the outside and one on the inside. But if you didn't want to do those, you can just leave them off. I have handles and a strap. If you didn't want to do both, leave the strap off and just do the handles. So if you're a beginner, you could make a scaled down basic version this time, and then next time, maybe be a bit more adventurous and add in those zippers and strap. Now, if you didn't want to do the zippers, I really encourage you to watch the bits where I put the zipper pocket in, just so you can see how I do it, and just, it's pretty easy once you get your head around it. Then I also have the rivets. If you didn't want to do rivets, that's fine. I'll just remind you of where to sew across instead of doing the rivets. So I just want to give a quick shout out to all the lovely people that have liked, subscribed and commented on my videos over the last few weeks. You guys have helped me immensely. By doing that, by subscribing and leaving a comment, you've boosted up my videos and got those YouTube algorithms going for me so that I've got more views on these ones, and it's given me that little bit of momentum. So I really, really appreciate it. And if you're new here, please like, subscribe and leave a comment and help me keep that momentum going so I'm not just talking to myself in my sewing room all day for no reason. Okay, I'm ready to get going. So let's get cracking. Let's have a look at what we need for today's project. So I've got a couple of different size acrylic rulers and a good cutting mat, rotary cutter, scissors and snippers. I have a marking tool, some pins and clips, and some double-sided tape to help me install my zippers. If you don't have double-sided tape, it's fine, you can just use pins. Then I have some zipper tape, some number 5 zipper heads, 2 1-inch D-rings, 2 1-inch swivel hooks and a 1-inch slider. And then I have some rivets as well. Now, if you don't have rivets or you don't have a rivet press, that's fine. You can just sew over the straps to keep them in place. It won't be a problem. Okay, let's have a look at our fabric and interfacing and our measurements. Let's have a look at the fabric that I've chosen for today's project. So over here, this is going to be my exterior. This is a cotton drill, but a cotton woven would be fine. I'm using this one just because I like the pattern and it is just a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker. With that one, I'll be using a fusible fleece and it is iron on. For the interior pieces, I'll be using this quilting cotton. And with that one, I'll be using a iron-on light interfacing. Then for my handles, I'll be using a vinyl, so I won't interface the vinyl for the handles. For my long strap, I'm going to use this fabric, so I will interface my long strap. And then I have some zipper tape. Now, if you haven't used zipper tape before or put the head on a zipper tape, I've got a couple of shorts up that might help you. Okay, let's have a look at the measurements for these. Let's have a look at how I've cut out the fabric. So let's start at the top. I have my 2 connectors. They are 2.5 inches by 2 inches, and I have fusible fleece that will go with them. Then I have my strap, which I've cut from the same fabric as my main bag. It will be 52 inches by 4 inches, and I will use a light interfacing with that one. Now, my fabric wasn't long enough to cut the 52 inches out of, so I'm going to be sewing together 2 pieces. And I'll show you how to do that just in case you're in the same boat as me. Then I have my 2 zipper pockets, and my zipper pockets are 9 inches by 12 inches. I've cut out 2 of those, and I've cut out light interfacing for these guys. Then I have my handles, and my handles are 15 inches by 4 inches, and I've cut out 2 of those. Now, if you're using vinyl, don't interface. If you are using just a cotton, then use either a light interfacing or a fusible fleece if you want to. Then I have my zipper tape, and these are both 9 inches each, and I have the number 5 zipper heads for them. Then I have my exterior main fabric, and it is 24 by 13 inches, and I have the fusible fleece with that one. And then I have my lining, which is the same size, 24 by 13, and I have light interfacing with that one. Now, usually this is where I would tell you to go and interface everything, but we are actually going to cut out our main fabric piece first before we interface it. And then we're going to use that as a template for this one. So just hold off on your interfacing for a moment, and let's look at how to shape this piece. So I've got my marking tool and a ruler, and I have my iron handy. So what I'm going to do is turn it lengthways in front of myself, and then fold it right sides together in half lengthways, so the back of the fabric is facing me. And I'm just going to give that a quick iron to get that crease. I'm going to keep ironing it as I go so that it just stays nice and neat for me. Then what I'm going to do is measure up 1.5 inches along the bottom. I'm going to give myself a mark there, and then on this side as well. Then I'm going to grab some scissors, and I'm going to give myself a little snip on my bottom corners, just to mark my corners there, just a little itty bitty snip. And then I'm going to give myself a little snip, little triangle snip at that 1.5 inch mark that I made also. Just so I can see it. Just like that. Then what I'm going to do is fold it in half widthways. Widthways. Hard to say with a lisp. Sideways. Just like that. And then give it a little hit with an iron. So my folded edge is on this side. Then I'm going to measure down from the top 3 inches and give myself a line across there. Like that. So it's 3 inches from the top. Then I'm going to measure in 1.5 inches and then give myself another line like that. Then from this line, I'm going to measure another 2.5 inches, which will be 4 inches from here. And give myself another line. Okay, now I'm going to grab a very scientific tool, a little bowl. You can use whatever you have handy. I could have also used my sticky tape, just anything that's sort of smallish that will give you a curve. So use the bottom of a coffee cup, for example. So what I'm doing is lining up one edge of my bowl with that bottom line and the other edge with that side line. And I'm just going to give myself a little curve like that. Then I'm going to measure and do the same thing on this side and give myself a curve there. Then I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to cut out along that line and around this curve. Just like that. So if your curve is a little bit more pronounced or less pronounced than mine, it doesn't matter. Does not make a difference. We just want a nice round shape there. Cool. And then that is the shape of our bag. Simple as that. So what I'm going to do now is iron on my fusible fleece onto this bit. I'll iron on the whole piece and then I'll trim it up. Then I'm going to lay this on top of my lining piece, which I'm going to interface first. And then I'll trace around it and cut out my lining piece. I'll interface all my other pieces while I'm at it. And then I will see you back here in a moment. So there's my lining cut out as well and all my pieces interfaced. Now let's have a look at how I'm going to put these two pieces of fabric together for my strap. Okay, let's have a look at this strap and how I'm going to join these together to make one long piece. If you didn't have this problem and you've got your 52 inches, no problem, just skip this bit, I'll timestamp it. So what I'm going to do is have one piece right sides up and I'm going to pop the other one right sides together, just like that. So they're at right angles. Then I'm going to draw a line from this inside corner to this bottom corner. So just make sure that you're doing it the right way and that you're hitting this bottom corner right on where that bottom piece of fabric finishes. Just like that. And then I'll whack some pins in there. So what's going to happen when I then sew across that line and fold this up is I'll have one long continuous piece of fabric. Now, I just totally fluked that. So if you see here, my flower lines up here and here. I should just take credit and say that I meant to do that, but I didn't. I just got like super lucky. So if you are using a fabric with a pattern on it, try and work it out so that it does actually work that way for you, so it doesn't look so jarring. But yeah, it's a good day for Kathy. I'm going to go sew across there. You don't need to watch me do that. And then when I get back, we will continue to make this strap. There we go. There's my strap sewn together. It's too funny. Now what we're going to do is fold this in half, wrong sides together. So the backing to the backing. And I'm just going to do a little bit and show you. Fold it in half, so I've got that crease mark. And then I'm going to fold it in half to that crease mark. And again, if you've made a strap before, just skip this bit. And then fold in this side. Give that a hit with the iron. And then fold it in half again. And then we have a strap. If you're using vinyl and you can't iron this, then use some nice wide double-sided sticky tape to sort of hold it in down as you go. Just like that. And then I'll whack some clips on there on both sides as I go along. So I'm going to do this to all of my strap. You go ahead and do yours and I'll see you back here in a moment. There we have our nice long strap. So what we're going to do now is take it over to the sewing machine and we are going to start at one end, come down one side, stitch all the way down at about 1/8 of an inch. Then we're going to stop, go back up to the same end that we started at and then come down the other side. Even though it's cotton woven, we still want to do it that way to ensure that it doesn't sort of buckle or stretch at all. So let's go over to the sewing machine and get that bit done. Okay, so I'm going to start on the folded edge And I've lengthened my stitch length to around a 4.5 because I'm top stitching. So I want my stitch length a little bit longer. And back stitch at the beginning here. And I want about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm lining up the side of my foot with the fabric. And just back stitch at the bottom. Now, like I said, when I start, oops, sorry, bumping the camera. So I'm going to keep it facing the same side up that I just sewed on. Go all the way back up to the top and start again. Back stitch a little bit and off I go. Now I'm just going to go across the top and bottom as well and just back stitch a little bit and then just zip across the top as well and back stitch a little bit. Done. Okay, let's have a look at how we put this long strap together with our hardware. So I'm going to grab my slider, one end of my strap, I'm going to poke it through and then turn it around and poke it through the other side. Pretty easy. Going to leave about 1.5 inches of that strap there, and then I'm going to pop a hole in the middle about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. Then I'm going to poke one of my rivets through, pop the back on it, just like that, and then give that a press in my rivet press. Now, obviously you don't need 2 of these. You just swap the dies over for what you're doing. I just do it this way because I'm spoiled and it's quicker for me when I'm filming to just have 2 going. So there's that, okay? So now I'm going to make sure there's no twists in my strap. Grab one of my hooks and I'm going to pop it on so the flat side of my hook is going to be on the same side as that fold over bit. So that's the back. Just like that. Then I'm going to make sure there's no twists in it. Grab the other end of my strap and poke it up through the buckle. I'm sorry if you can hear that. That's my dog Elvis. He groans like an old man. So up through one side and then back down through the other. Just like that. Give myself a little bit of room to work with. Pull that through. Cool. So that's what it should look like. I've got my buckle, my slider, and then my hook. Okay. Now, I'm going to grab this free end and I'm going to pop my other hook on. So the back, the flat bit is going to be on the back of my strap. So the front bit is going to be on the same side as my slider. And just fold it over. Same thing, about 1.5 inches. I'll use my mat to measure. Whack a hole in it. Sorry, get that out of the way. You can measure up 3/4 of an inch if you like and find your center. I can eyeball it. I can see what I'm doing. Whack the rivet through the front, pop the backing on the back, and give it a press. Now, if you haven't got one of these cam snaps yet, really recommend it because how easy was that? Now, if you don't have one of these, what you would do is put your slider on, and then instead of putting rivet through, go over and just sew a square or rectangle around. And then same thing up here. Instead of the rivet, just go over to your sewing machine and just sew that bit down in a rectangle. Otherwise, there is my strap done. So what we're going to do now is look at installing our exterior zipper pocket. So I've got my zipper pocket piece and my main exterior piece. So I'm going to fold my zipper pocket piece in half and find my center. Then I'm going to lay it on the table, wrong side facing me, and measure 1 inch down from that center mark. And I'm going to give myself a 7-inch line. So 3.5 in that direction and 3.5 in that direction. Then I'm going to measure down 1/2 inch from that line and give myself another line. Just like that. I'm going to join them up. So I have a 1/2 inch rectangle. Then I'm going to measure up from that bottom bit 1/4 inch and give myself a line right across the middle. Just like that. Then I'm just going to sketch in a couple of triangles on either side. So I've got a 7-inch box, 1/2 inch deep, centered. Pretty easy. Right, now I'm going to find my center of this piece. So same thing, I'm going to fold it in half and give it a little snip, just like that, to find my center. What have I got under there? Cool. Then from that center snip, I'm going to measure down 1.5 inches. And I'm going to place my zipper piece right sides together, so the pretty side of my zipper piece and the pretty side of this one together, centered, so that my center snip lines up with the center snip on that pocket piece. Cool. Pins. Whack some pins around there. And then we're going to take that over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch around this box, just like that. I'm going to shorten my stitch length to around a 3 this time and start on one of those corners, and I'm going to backstitch. And then I'm just going to follow that box all the way around. Now the reason I've shortened my stitch length to a 3 is that I want to make sure that I can hit these corners and stop on the corners as best I can. If my stitch length was longer, I would overshoot or undershoot. So coming up to this first corner, just going to go 1 stitch at a time. If you don't have a 1 stitch button, just use your flywheel if you like. And then down. So if I was having trouble, I'm just going to show you a trick. If I was having trouble landing on this corner because my stitch length was going to take me past it or land before it, what I could do is shorten my stitch length to say a 2, drop 1 stitch in there, and that will land me right on my corner. And then I'll lengthen it back up to the 3 that I was using. So if you're having trouble landing on your corners, that's what you can do. And then keep going down around this side. And I'm going to backstitch. Cool. So there we go. I've stitched down around that box. Now what I'm going to do is grab a seam ripper And I'm going to use my seam ripper to cut along this middle line. So I'm going to poke it through and then really carefully just push my seam ripper up as close as I can to those stitches without actually touching those stitches. If you do accidentally hit your stitches, just go back over to the sewing machine and reinforce it. Cool. Then with my scissors, I'm going to snip along those triangles that we made. And that's just going to help it fold out a bit nicer. And I've also got my iron heating up and handy. Snip and snip. Now I'm going to just take away some of that bulk of that triangle piece. I'm not going to worry too much about it. I just want to get rid of a little bit. Cool. Grab my ironing mat and my iron. I'm going to fold that piece up. Give it a hit. This piece down. Give it a hit. And you probably guessed it. Sideways. And sideways, just to help me turn it out. Just work it through the best you can. Pop that up and out. And then I'm going to use my iron and roll it in my fingers to try and get that sitting where I want it. There we go. Get rid of my mat. Now I'm going to grab my zipper tape, pull that sort of down almost to one end, and I'm just going to whack some of my double-sided sticky tape along the top and bottom edge. Now, like I said, if you don't have double-sided sticky tape handy, don't worry, you can just use pins. Okay. Rip that off. Cool. Now with the zipper head closing to the left, so opening to the right, I'm going to lay my zipper and then get my fabric and line it up on top, making sure I've got some tape either side of that hole. And then try and line that up so that zipper is straight. Get up over it and look down on it. Now, if you didn't have tape, this is where you just whack some pins in around there. Cool. Now we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch a box around, being really careful as we go over these ends and making sure we remember to get that zipper head out of our way. You don't want to hit the zipper head with your needle. No. We're top stitching, so I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to around a 4.5, and I'm going to get that zipper head right out of the way. Back stitch, and I'm going to be lining up the edge of my foot with the inside of that fabric. So I'm only about 1/8 of an inch away. We want to be nice and close while staying on our exterior fabric. Up to this end. I'm going to be really careful going over these teeth. Around. Move that head out of the way and then up over the teeth and back stitch. Easy. So there is our zipper all sewn in. Now I'm going to grab my not good scissors, flip him over, and I'm just going to trim this zipper tape down. Just like that. And a little bit on that end. Get rid of that. Cool. Then I'm going to fold my pocket up and I'm going to give that a hit with the iron and whack some clips on. Now I'm going to take this back over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these 3 sides closed. Now, if we did it just like that, you'd be able to see it on the front. So what I'm going to do is fold up one side like that, sew along that side, fold the top down, go along the top, and then fold that side down. Now, I usually do it from the back like that. If you want to do it from the front, then that's fine if that's easier for you at the sewing machine, whatever works for you, but let's go do that. Okay, I'm going to shorten my stitch length back down to a 3.5. I'm going to pop it over that way and start from the bottom. And I'm at about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And backstitch up to the top, lift, pivot, and I'm folding that top panel down. And then across the top, and I'm feeling with this finger to make sure that I'm not hitting my exterior fabric. Lift, pivot, and fold that piece down, out of my way. And backstitch at the bottom. So there's our zipper all done. Very cool. Now I'm going to grab my big ruler and my chalk and I'm going to find my center snips. So those snips that we did at the halfway point. And I'm going to give myself a line. And then I'm going to give myself a line at the snips that we did to the left and right of that as well. There and there. Okay, so I have my 3 lines done. Now I'm going to fold it in half, sort of be at that center line. Give it a hit with the iron. Take this top piece, fold it down onto that line. Give it an iron. Flip it over. And then do the same thing on this side. Fold it down. Find that line. And give that a hit with the iron. Just like that. So that's what it will look like. Okay, now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and I'm simply going to stitch down the sides at 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. Okay, I'm leaving my stitch length at that 3.5 and I want about 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to backstitch really well. Now if you need to use a hump jump to get over those layers, then go ahead, but it shouldn't be too thick at all, really. Up to the top and backstitch there. And then same thing on this side. Too easy. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing to our lining piece with our pocket. So I've gone ahead and found my centers. I'm going to pop my pocket lining piece over and give myself a 7 inch line 1 inch from the top. And then down 1/2 inch, just exactly the same as what we did on the exterior piece. Join up my sides and then find my halfway point, which will be 1/4 inch up from the bottom or down from the top, whatever way you prefer. And then I'll sketch in those little triangles. And then I'm going to place them right sides together, 1.5 inches down from the top, from that top center snip. So I'm lining up my 1.5 just on that little bit of a curve. Just like that. Whack some pins in. And we'll take that over to the sewing machine and sew around our box exactly the same way as we did for the exterior piece. Okay, I've got my stitch length on around a 3, starting with my needle in my work and backstitch. And just exactly the same as what we did last time, just being really careful to land our needle on these corners so that our zipper is the same length all the way across. One more pivot. So if you've never done zippers before, they're really not that scary. And there's lots of different techniques to putting them in as well, depending on what you're making. But you'll be really well served to learn how to do it. And backstitch. Done. Okay, same as what we did before. Seam ripper, poke him through and just up to the end, being careful not to hit those stitches. And just up as close as I dare to those stitches. And then use my scissors to snip up to those corners. And then take away a little bit of that bulk. And there we go. So same as what we did before. I'm just going to fold that piece up. Give it a bit of a hit with the iron. Fold the top down. And side and side. Just like that. And then poke it through. And same thing as before, just wiggle it around and then iron it flat. There we go. Now, disclaimer, my dog Elvis has joined me, so any bodily noises are the dog. He just shook his head. Okay, that looks good. Happy with that. Grab my zipper tape and some sticky tape. Pull that head up to one end. Some tape, and again, if you don't have tape, just use pins. Okay, so remember that we want our zipper head closing to the left, opening to the right, and I'll lay that on top, making sure I've got zipper tape on both ends, and then just making sure that tape is nice and straight. There we go. Now we're going to take that over to the sewing machine, same as before, stitch around all 4 sides. There we go, there's our zipper sewn in. So flip him over, get rid of some of this excess tape on the ends. You don't need that getting in our way. Just be careful you don't snip into your pocket fabric. And then fold that pocket up, hit it with the iron, clip it, and then we'll take it back over to the sewing machine. And remembering to do the same thing that we did before, where we folded up the sides and the top as we went along and sewed it. Now this time, like, you won't feel the lining as much. So if you're doing it from the back like me, just be really careful that you have got it all up and out of the way. Okay, I've shortened my stitch length back down to that 3.5, and needle in my work, remembering to backstitch, and I'm folding those edges up out of my way. Top, pivot, push that bit down, across the top, pivot, fold that bit down, and remembering to backstitch at the bottom. That is our pocket done. So there's our pocket all done. Lovely. Okay, now we're going to put this magnetic clasp on. So what I'm going to do is find my ruler and measure down 1 inch from that top snip, and just give myself a little circle there to work with at that midline. I'm going to grab one of these backing pieces, pop it so that circle bit is over the dot that I just made, and fill in those little side tabs. Then I'm going to grab my seam ripper, poke it through, and very carefully just rip it the length of that mark that I made. Just like that. Then I'm going to poke the main body of my clasp through the front. Pop this backing piece on the back and pop my little prongs out. Easy. Same thing with the other side. I'm going to find my center. So you want these to match up. Measure 1 inch down from that snip. Measure 1 inch down. Give myself a dot. Find my backing piece. Put the circle over the dot. Colour in the sides. And rip up those marks. Now if you haven't used magnetic clasps or hardware before, that's how easy it is. Poke that through the front. All this stuff can seem really intimidating to start off with if you haven't done it before, but like anything, once you've done it, it's just practice. There we go. So there's my magnetic clasps all on. So when my bag is done up, they will lock together like that, and bob to your uncle. Okay, now we're going to do exactly the same thing to our lining piece as what we did to our outer piece. So I'm going to clip those magnetic clasps together so it's right sitting where I want it to. Give it a hit with an iron so I've got that bottom crease going, and mark these bottom corners just by giving it a little snip on both sides. Cool. Then same thing, I'm going to measure up from the bottom, that bottom edge, 1.5 inches. Give myself, actually I'll just draw all the way across, I think. At 1.5 inches. And then flip it over, and same thing on this side, 1.5 inches. and across. Cool. Now, open it up so it's right sides facing me and fold it in half that way. And give it another hit with an iron that way. Then I'm going to fold this top piece down to that line until I get to that line and I can see it. And then give it a hit with the iron along that line. So I've got that first half of that pleat happening. Flop him over. So it's right sides facing me again, and then fold down this other side to I see that line. And fold it on that line. And then I've got that bottom plate. And give that a hit. And then same thing, just take that over to the sewing machine and I will sew down along the sides and that will give me my lining piece. Okay, so I'm going to start from the bottom where those pleats are. And I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch. And my stitch length is still nice and short. It's around the 3.5. And just straight up those sides. Now, on the other side, we're going to leave a turnout hole. So I'll remember to put that up on the screen as well, just in case you don't watch this bit, which you wouldn't know because you wouldn't be watching it. So I'm just going to go about 1 inch along the bottom, cut my threads, leave a good gap. So I'm just at the top, about 1.5 inches away from the top. Start there, back stitch all the way up to the top, and then back stitch again. So I've left that turnout hole there. Let's have a look at these handles. Okay, so what we're going to do is find our midpoint, which will be 2 inches, because our straps are 4 inches wide, and give myself a line. Now, if you're using vinyl, double-sided tape will be your friend. Lay that tape right down the middle. Now, if you're doing it this way like me, remember that you'll need to clean off your needle after doing that because your needle will go through this tape and get sticky. So I'm going to fold up my vinyl to that middle line and I'm pressing, I'm not swiping because I don't want to stretch the vinyl at all as I do this. So I always clean off my needle afterwards with an alcohol wipe. And it just gets that sticky residue off your needle. But if you haven't changed your needle for a little while, then after you do this, it's a good opportunity to remember to change your needle. But if it's a fairly new one, then just wipe it off. Okay, and then in half again and whack some clips on there. So do that to your other one as well. And then we'll take these over to the sewing machine and stitch them down at 1/8 of an inch. Doing it the same way that we did the strap, going down one side, finishing, and then starting at the top again. Now let's have a look at these handles. So we are top stitching, so I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to around a 4.5. And I'm going to stay right up against the edge of my strap, of my handle, sorry. So trying to stay at around 1/8 of an inch, just being mindful that I'm catching both sides. So same thing, I'm going to stop when I get to the bottom, back stitch a little bit, and then I'm going to start from the same end so that my strap doesn't twist. So keeping it flat, so it's the same side up, and start at the same end. This will just help minimize any sort of twisting that the strap might get because it's vinyl. And there's no interfacing sort of holding it either. So do this to both of your handles. And when we're done, I will see you back over at the table. Just don't forget to backstitch. Let's have a look at these connectors. So find the long way, the 2.5 by 2. So one way is going to be a little bit longer than the other. We want to lay it so the long way is going sideways, and then we're going to do the same thing as we did with our straps, just fold it into the middle, but we're not going to fold it in half again. And just whack some clips on that. Just like that. Do that to the other one as well. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and we are just going to sew up either side. And while we're at the sewing machine, we'll then slide our D-ring on. So the flat part of our D-ring will be at the back, and then we'll fold it over and stitch across. But don't worry, I'll show you how to do that over at the sewing machine. Let's have a look at these connectors. So we're still top stitching, so I'm going to leave my stitch length at around a 4.5. Going to back stitch a little bit, down one side, rip across the bottom, and then up the other side, and across the bottom. Now, because they're so small, I don't really need to worry about them twisting or anything like that, which is why I can go up one side and down the other. Then I'm going to grab one of my D-rings, just like we talked about. Going to put it so the flat side is on the back, fold it over, and then I'm just going to stitch down this edge. Just like that. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing to my other connector. Okay, let's turn this exterior piece out and have a look, and we'll clip our connectors on to sew those on as well. Okay, so poke out those bottom corners really well. There we go. This is such a cute little bag and so easy. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to grab my connectors and some clips. Grab my clips. Okay, so going to grab my connector and just place it along that side seam, this bit, side seam. And with about almost a quarter of an inch poking up, so that when I sew it along that curve, I know that I'm going to catch all of it. Same thing along that side bit, centered, and whack some clips on. Cool. Let's take that over to the sewing machine and sew those on. Okay, I'm just going to tuck all the rest of it out of the way, so I'm not sewing over anything that I don't want to. Sewing it from the right side up. Pop that under there. Now I've got a nice short stitch around 3mm. Make sure that everything is sitting the way I want it, so I'm not sewing over anything that I don't want to. And backstitch really well. Go over, backstitch really well, and then I'm going to go over it again. just to make sure that it's nice and strong. Cool. Other side. Making sure everything is down, out of my way. Back stitch and back stitch. Cool. Now what we're going to do is grab our exterior. We're going to open up our lining piece and we are going to shove our exterior into the lining. Now I've got my zipper of my main piece on that side and my zipper pocket of the lining piece on the other side. I don't want them both on the same side. So then I'm going to stuff that in. I mean, it's not the end of the world if they're on the same side. It's just, you know, better if you don't have them on the same side. Cool. Now grab some clips and I'm going to clip along that side bit first. Whack a clip there. Whack a clip in the other side, making sure that my D-rings are down. There. And then I'll match up my center snips on the front and back. There. And there. And then I'm just going to clip all the way around. Such a good size. I like the size of this bag. I was going to make it bigger because it's got the handles and the strap, and I thought, oh, it can sort of handle being bigger, but I quite like it this size. And I know I'm sick of carrying around big handbags because then it ends up full of everybody else's junk. If you have a little handbag, it's like, sorry. There we go. And one there. Cool. Now we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew around all our curves. So I'm not going to sew across the top. We don't want to sew across those bits because our handle is going to tuck in there. So leave those open. Okay, let's go do that. Start with my needle in my work. I'm at about a 3.5mm stitch length. And I'm going to sew down around one of these outside curves first where I know my connector and D-ring is sitting. So I'm going to be very careful when I get here. I'm going to feel for that D-ring and make sure I'm not anywhere near it. Tuck that seam down, up over my connector. And I'm just going to back stitch over that connector again. Holding that D-ring. Now remember, we're not going across that top bit, so I'm going to back stitch, cut my thread. Now if you're using a machine with a removable extension table bit, then you're just going to be able to wrap this around. It's going to be easier. And up, so good 1/4 inch away from the edge. Being sure that I'm catching that lining all the way around. And back stitch. Starting on this side, needle in my work. Coming down again to that connector. So I'm going to make sure that D-ring is sitting down and hasn't popped up. And up over that connector. And back stitch a little bit over it again. Just to make sure it is nice and secure. And it's attached to the lining and the exterior. And just be mindful too that your magnetic clasps are under there as well. You don't want to hit them with your needle. So always use these fingers to feel where everything is. Cool. Let's go turn this out and have a look. Okay, let's turn this out and have a look. So I'm going to find my turnout hole, grab my exterior piece and gently start birthing my bag. Just gently pull it through and pull that lining over. Awesome. Make sure my connectors look good. If your connectors aren't, if you see that they aren't attached properly, then turn it back out and go back and do it again. Now, this turnout hole, going to stick my fingers in it, pull it so that it sits where it wants to sit, grab some clips, whack some clips on there, and we'll take this back over to the machine and close up this turnout hole. Okay, starting right at the bottom, so I'll make sure that I catch all of it. Needle in my work, nice short stitch length, and as close to the edge as I can get, so I'm making sure that I'm catching both sides. All the way up, and I'm going to go a little bit further than what I think I need to, just to make sure. And backstitch. Okay, let's shove this lining down into our main bag, and then we need to wiggle out these strap holes as well. So I might try and get them out, and then I'll put the lining down into the bag. Cool. Okay, now pop that down and give it a little bit of a hit with the iron. Cool. Now with these handles, I want to really pull them out, lay them flat, and give them a good hit with the iron, because we're going to poke our straps down in there, fold that little handle bit down on itself, and sew our straps in that way. So we want to make sure that they are out and ironed and sitting nicely. Okay, now what I'm going to do is grab some clips, and I'm just going to clip along this edge and just roll that down in my fingers so that that seam is sitting nicely. I'm going to clip all the way around, and then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch. So again, we're just going to go around the curves. We're not going to touch these bits yet. We're going to top stitch all around the outside, leaving the top of those handles, and then we'll come back and do the handles. So let's go do that bit. Okay, I'm top stitching, so I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to around 4.5. I'm going to start on one of those curves and remembering not to go across that top bit, and back stitch a little bit. And I'm staying nice and close to the edge of my fabric. I want about the 1/8 of an inch. Coming down to this connector. If you need to use a hump jump, then go ahead. If you don't have a hump jump, just fold up some fabric and pop it under the back of your needle to help you get up over that, because there is some bulk there. Making sure that D-ring is down out of my way. Backstitch. Now I'm feeling for where that magnetic clasp is too, making sure I'm not getting anywhere near it. And backstitch. And again, that connector. So I'm laying it as flat as I can. And then I'll pop that hump jump under the back of it. Cool. And then this last curve. There we go. Let's go whack these straps in. Okay, so there's our bag all top stitched down. Now this next part is a little bit fiddly. What we're going to do is grab the top of our handle there, and I'm just going to turn that fabric down about 1/4 inch into itself so I can't see any raw edges. And then I'm going to give it a bit of a hit with the iron, like that. Then I'm going to grab my strap and I'm going to poke the end of it down into that hole. And I'm going to poke it down about 3/4 of an inch because we're going to sew over it, but I also want to pop a rivet in there as well. So I want to make sure I've got enough of it down there so I can feel it, it's there. Make sure I've got enough of it down there that I can catch it with a rivet as well. Pop some clips on it, make sure there's no twists. Over to this other side, pull that down, bit of a press with the iron, burn myself in the process, wouldn't be a day if I didn't. And then pop that down, making sure I'm popping it in the hole on the same side. And same thing, give it a wiggle down. It's about 3/4 of an inch down there. And I can feel it. And whack some clips on. So do that, do the other side as well. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we are just going to stitch along there at about maybe 1/4 of an inch down from the edge of that strap. And then we'll come back and whack a rivet in each one as well. Let's go do that. Okay, so I've got my stitch length on around a 4 because we're not exactly top stitching, but I don't want those stitches to be small and tight either. But I want them to hold my strap in place. So needle in my work, back stitch over that edge, that side, back over, and then back stitch over that side bit. And just do all of them exactly the same as that. Okay, there we are, all stitched down. Now, if you don't have a cam press, that's fine. Just leave it like that. It will hold fine, I think. But I'm going to whack some rivets in there. So I'm going to go down maybe 1/4 of an inch from my stitch line in the middle. If you want to use a pen and mark it first, I'm just going to eyeball it. And I'll whack all my holes in first. I should turn this around, make it easier on myself. Punch net. I've got both my cam presses from Green Beans in Australia. And last time I bought one a few weeks ago, they were on sale for around 24, 25 bucks, which is pretty good. And about the same in postage because they are quite heavy. Pop that one out of the way, grab my rivets. Pop the long post through from the front and that bit on the back. Rivets are just, they add strength, but they just, when you use hardware, it amps up the look of your bag a lot. So if you've been on the fence about getting one and trying one, I really recommend that you do. You can get the little hand press things, but they are a little bit hard to use and I can't use them. My hands hurt when I use them. So this is so much easier. And pop that in, little press, pop that in, little press. And they do snaps too, so like the snaps that are on baby clothes, which is really handy for a lot of stuff. And this last one. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of these bad boys out of my way and then we'll give this thing a iron. I'm gonna give it a last little iron just to get all those little wrinkles out that I've popped in there when I've been fussing with it. Okay, I think that's good. I will whack this strap on there. And we are done. Now, if you made that along with me today, you should be really proud of yourself. That is a really cute little bag. And if you watch just for funsies, then thank you so much for coming along for the ride. And thank you so much to the people that have liked, subscribed, and commented on my videos over the last few weeks. You've really helped me get the YouTube algorithms going and helped more people find my videos, and I appreciate it more than you can ever know. Okay, well that's it for me today. So remember people, it is only fabric. We can always buy more, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye peeps. Bugger.